Hey guys, welcome back to Liminal Period. It's your girl Chun-Li Shoddy. In my most recent video, I shared why I think Asian women don't date Asian men. My perspective was it's based on compatibility as well as internalized trauma. Colorism does not only exist within the Black community or within America. Colorism really do affect people around the world, especially in Asia. Asia is the largest continent. I'm gonna remind you guys again. It's just that within America, we're only, I want to say, 6 to 9% of the entire population. And a lot of times, we're not really pedestalized or we're not really platformed. So it's a kind of situation, if you know, you know. So the FUNG brothers right here, where I'm sharing with you guys, they're actually really big on YouTube. They've been around for the last 10, 15 years. I've been following them since the very get-go. And there's a lot of Asians on the West Coast that have their own perspective. But again, I'm going to remind you guys that there are billions of Asian people in the world, okay? And so not all of us are going to share the same view. Being an Asian person that is also mixed and being on the East Coast and more specifically the Southeast, as in Atlanta, my perspective is going to be very different than someone that is born in the Bay or grew up in the OC, Westminster, Little Saigon. Yeah, our experiences are different. Over here, we were the foundational families. We are the ones establishing roots and trying to find our way. So a lot of times we have a little bit closer ties to the traditional values that are seen back in Asia. So again, maybe colorism doesn't affect every Asian person, but I know it for sure affects a lot of Asian people. And you can't tell whether an Asian person have been here for one generation or if they've been here for 6. Okay? You really can't tell, especially if we are just procreating and sticking within our own community. So again, your experiences may be different than mine. However, we're getting long-winded, so let's get into the meat of today's conversation.
This new study from London is causing people to talk about it.
Yeah, this is going viral in several circles on the internet right now, Andrew. It is a study from the King's College in London where it said Asians with darker skin tones are more likely to experience bias even from within their own families. Somebody said within families, children with light skin were often favored, while those with dark skin were stigmatized and subjected to insults and bullying. It had included a quote, Andrew, from a 31-year-old Pakistani woman who said, her mom would say, how come your sister is so much lighter than you? How come you're so much darker than your sister, huh? You didn't wash properly?
Ooh. Yeah, first of all, I think any family that does this to their kids is wrong, and I think it's toxic. But I do think, I guess the study, it only polled 33 people, and then most of them were South Asian. So I think maybe the dynamics within South Indians, is a little bit different than even other Asians. But I don't want to say it doesn't happen amongst other Asians. It
no, for sure.
Does.
I think that's why it went so viral. Even though that the sample size was just 33 people, I guess the findings, like you said, they go along with what people already believe to be true. But I will say this, I think it varies a lot family to family, right? And what are the factors that impact it?
I mean, family.
Quick pause, because I just want to chime in real quick before I let them cook. But yes, it does vary from family to family, community to community, country to country. Again, when we speak about Asia, we talk about it in this umbrella term. However, there's literally billions of people, right? And so just going back to the comment that he first shared, the one from the Pakistani woman, right? How come you're so much darker than your sister? And the thing is, I literally heard the exact same thing from my mom. And the thing is, it's it's so internalized, this colorism, that when they say it, they don't even think that it's coming from a place of bad intention. Like I said, I am Asian and Black. And I remember distinctly, one time having a trip to Atlanta. Like I said, my mom moved us to South Georgia, but we still frequently visited Atlanta because that's where all of the Asian grocery stores are located, right? So we would go there, and I remember and again, Asian people chime in, but a lot of times Asian people don't have that interpersonal relationship with their parents. As in, we don't actually know them as individuals. We might know them as our authority figure, or we might know them as someone that is responsible for taking care of us. However, how often do Asian people actually sit around and discuss their childhood with their children? how often are we actually sitting around discussing our thoughts, our ideas, our opinions, our perspective, or even simple things like, what is your favorite color? We don't know, right? Because a lot of times, like, we're not focused on some of these other personality traits. But anyways, getting back into it, I remember one trip from Atlanta. It was just my mother and I, and we were driving back home to South Georgia. And I know now as an adult that this was probably her way of trying to drum up some conversation to, you know, like, learn a little bit about me. But during that time, I wasn't feeling it. When my mom asked me, why the hell am I so black, or why am I so dark? Like, literally, like, I am in awe just like you guys are. So anyways, yeah, colorism existed, and I was just like, yo, mom, like, literally, I wouldn't be this dark, like, if my daddy was not my daddy. But my daddy is who he is, so I don't even understand where this conversation is coming from. So like I say, it's like, literally, I understand, like, within the black community, I am sexualized, I am exoticized, I am fetishized, right? I am light skinned, I am yellow, I am whatever you want to call it, Blackanese, Blasian, right? But in the Asian community, we don't even have a term for people like me outside of black. Like, literally, it's just black. Like, you're just black. Sorry for getting a little too real there. I'm going to shut up and play the clip.
Family, what kind of how classist is that family, even the world that family operates in, or the jobs or the careers and the community that family's in.
If your mom is like Michelle Yeoh's character in CRA, I'm not saying Michelle Yeoh herself personally.
If you guys haven't had a chance to watch that movie, I highly do recommend it, because it really does shed some light on the different class dynamics within Asia. But anyways, CRA, Crazy Rich Asian.
I mean, she was probably colorist. They didn't bring it up in the movie, but I would assume a mom that's like that is. Somebody says it also matters what subculture and worlds you operate in. Like we said, Andrew, me and you personally, within our own family, even though there are different shades, even our parents are different shades of colors, there was not this dynamic.
No,
like
we didn't talk about it. They didn't talk about it at home. Like, even if we got tan, we were out doing yard work with our dad. Mom never complained, like, oh, why are you guys getting so dark? You need to put on sunscreen.
No.
We would just rock the tan line. So I think
that example hit so hard for me, because I told you guys, I grew up on a farm. My mom has 60 acres, so there's a lot of grass to mow. I remember in the deep South, in South Georgia, where the gnats are literally as thick as the oxygen that I'm breathing, okay? Like, I can just touch the gnats. I remember just trying to mow 60 acres, and my mom is telling me to put on a windsuit because you don't want to get too dark. Bruh, I'm tan. I'm literally tan already. And she didn't want it, and I was like, I'm gonna die of heat exhaustion. I'm literally gonna die because I cannot breathe underneath this visor, underneath this windsuit, underneath this face mask. I can't do it.
shout out to our parents, and shout out to any parents out there who never judged people outwardly on that type of thing. And I think that's very important. It does trickle down to the kid.
But even though we did not have it within our nuclear family unit, Andrew, did we observe it within any sort of systems that we were raised in?
Sure. You know, I mean, on Sundays, we would go to church, and that would be a lot of different types of Chinese people.
And Chinese people, if you guys know, even though most people think they're just like one thing, it's 1.4 billion people. So there actually is a gigantic spectrum.
I mean, right off the bat, listen, the Southern Chinese generally a little bit more tan than the Northern Chinese or the Taiwanese people at our church growing up, right?
And there was a girl who was half Chinese and half Filipino, but she was raised by her mom that was the Chinese side. And everybody at church, like,
you thought she was cute.
Yeah, everybody thought she was good looking.
Yeah.
But I noticed some of the more traditional minded East Asian guys did not like her because of colorism, or I guess the feature set or the skin tone.
Yeah,
but me and you, obviously, we were hanging out with a lot of Vietnamese, Filipino, Cambodian people. We were going to hot import nights, looking at different looks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for some people, they were not open-minded to that look. They only wanted I was going to say JAV, but I was like saying for sure, JAV, J-pop, anime looks.
Nah, that girl looked...
Pause, right? Because, again, like, I want to share their specific coverage of this conversation because they were also on the opposite end on yesterday's video, not understanding the fact that Asian women may be choosing outside of the community because of this same colorism that they're speaking on.
Look like ABG. That's what I grew up being attracted to. But yeah,
ABG is Asian baby girl.
Comment section is like how colorism in a homogenous East Asian society like Korea or China or Japan, it is different. Even though there is a skin tone thing there going on, it's different than in the colonized countries like possibly like India, the Philippines, and obviously Latin America.
Thing right now. Let's get into the comment section, Andrew. Somebody said, it seems that way everywhere in the world. It's not just their sample size.
Yeah,
this
precisely.
exists
It's everywhere.
in many different regions. Even in Europe, the Scandinavians and Anglo-Saxons are viewed differently than the Iberian Peninsula Mediterranean whites.
Yeah, I mean, I guess even within white people, they kind of do discriminate against gingers, redheads, right? Like a little bit.
That's inter-UK.
Yeah, that's intra-white.
Another internet comment. Hey guys, don't overread into skin color. Skin color may be a factor into lookism within certain places, but there's a lot of other stuff that you're not considering, whether it's religion, income class, education class, ancient tribal rankings of where you fit in a dynastic or imperial like king system.
It's also
I wanted to share that specific comment because, like I said, this conversation is very nuanced. Again, yesterday's video was my first stab at it. Okay, like I'm not going to be able to condense the entire complexity of an entire continent into just 20, 30 minutes. It's too much.
economic class thing, you know, like, and if you are coming from a comparable class, and even if you're a little tanner skin, I don't think people even think about it.
But I think it varies. I think some places they would go off the color of the skin, and other places they would go off the other stats. So how different is it like in the places that have been colonized? For example, everybody points out Latin America the most. There was a ton of anecdotes in the comment section from Latin America, but to a lesser extent, the Philippines, and even to a lesser extent, India.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those places, of course, because they have like a whole class of person that is part European, and generally that class of people is considered higher class or richer, or they happen to be richer, or their lineage is richer, or whatever.
Whether they dominate economics or politics or media or whatever.
Yeah, well,
right?
because if they're the colonizers, if they're at all a descendant of the colonizers, then they usually are put in a better position to succeed.
More
in that
elevated pedestal immediately.
You guys remember Tyla and why her conversation as to the fact that she is colored and not black? You guys remember that within the black community, why that was so controversial? Again, like I say, it's like we are literally going through the same issues, same, but different.
Right. Whether just off look or maybe even their family dynamics are more powerful.
But I think it is important to note that, let's just use like China, for example, that colorism in China is not based off of like colonization from Europeans, right? And a lot of people like to point out like, oh, Asians like fair skin too. Asians like fair skin too.
Right, look at the K-pop stars, like very milky, snowy texture, right?
Right, but that's not because they want to be white Europeans. So that's why I would say it's not so much a whiter skin thing, it's a lighter skin thing, but it's not because they want to be European. They just like that soft, milky, snowy white skin with the dark black hair.
And that may have been related to working in the fields or the type of industries and jobs that were available even just like 100 years ago. Like obviously jobs in the past 50, 60, 70 years have dramatically changed since 100 years ago.
Think about the makeup that like geishas wear, or like the Chinese opera wears. Like when they put on the white face, they're not trying to play Europeans. They're just saying like, you know, this is what the high class people do. They don't stand out in the sun.
Right. But it gets confusing because when people say white skin, they're thinking about like a white Anglo-Saxon European, obviously the most dominant group, I guess, globally the last couple hundred years. Exactly. Whereas really they use milky and snowy a lot. Those are the words I hear translated. How is it in colonized countries, Andrew? There was a lot of comments from various platforms talking about, I guess, Mexico. Because Mexico specifically is the easiest use case to see intra-family colorism. I'm not saying all, by the way, I'm just going off the comment section, because 60% of Mexico is mixed, mestizo, but they said about 20 to 30% is white European looking in Mexico, and 10% is very Mayan or Aztec and indigenous looking.
I don't know.
Pause real quickly because I know they were talking specifically about Mexico, but again, like when I tell you guys like this is a very common theme or a storyline that a lot of people are going through around the world, because not just Mexico, but if you look within Puerto Rico, if you look within inside Dominican Republic, Brazil, Guyana, Trinidad, it's like within a lot of Latin America in general, you're going to have the indigenous population that are mixed with the native people, as well as the people that were brought over from the slave trade, as well as the conquistadors. So there is a very interesting dynamic within all of these places. And when I say that, let's remember that most of the world have been colonized at one point or another. So again, a lot of these subcultures are just often overlooked. But This is why my channel exists, right? I'm trying to bridge that conversation. So I'm really hoping that you guys have listened this far.
Oh, maybe there's something that unites Mexicans, man. They just like to hang out with each other and just chill and crack a beer open. So I don't know. They must have like a culture.
I did hear that they do have some discrimination that they have within their world. Because if you look at the Mexican entertainment industry, Andrew, it is more of the European-looking ones.
Yeah, for sure.
And same with the Philippines. The Philippines, the people who's elevated in the media is like usually a half or a quarter European.
Yes.
Again, we're trying to draw correlations, right? Whenever you notice the people that are pedestalized or platformed within the Black community, they're often light-skinned or white adjacent people. It's going to be a lot of the mixed race people like Drake, J. Cole. They're both half white. When you look at the women that are popularized or that are seen as the standard of beauty, a lot of times within the Black community, again, they're light-skinned or they are mixed.
What's funny, and this is kind of messed up though, I think a lot of moms, and some side about the mom side of the family is always the most like black pill, like about looks.
Lookism.
Yeah, like the dads don't really care because dads are just like, I don't know, just do good work and just be a man and just be productive. I don't want to think about this cosmetic stuff. But then women generally think about cosmetics more and their skin.
I think, to be honest, in global society, anywhere, women's like looks is, I guess, impacts their life more than the looks of a man.
I guess that makes sense.
Agree that for the older generations in Asia, they pretty much go off height, look, and probably skin tone does play into look, thinness, education, and money. This guy said that it seems like humor, good works in society, sports, and other intangible skills such as vibes do not really up your status to the older generation.
I mean, you're just talking about personality because the older generation was coming from a time where your economic status meant so much. That meant if you were going to come to America or not, or that meant if you were going to live a good life or not. Now, obviously,
they did not pick people based on vibes.
Yeah, now that we're all in America and everybody kind of, you generally know how to live at least a middle level, like middle class lifestyle. Like, yeah, it's more about maybe your vibe.
I do disagree with that, though. I always noticed that at church. I know our family was not like that, but some of the families, like I said, there was a pretty big variance in church. Some of them, it was like, if you wasn't the tallest, best looking, biggest, sharpest nose kid in the family, it's like you get like a second tier status.
Yes.
So you guys got their perspective. However, I wanted to end this conversation on the perspective of actual Asian women within society. The last clip is going to be from a sociology class that I found here on YouTube, and I crazy binge watch this channel because the conversations are just so complex, and honestly, it touches on a lot of topics that maybe we are too sensitive as just everyday people. But anyways, let's get into it.
And what's perfect skin?
Clear, like no anything on the face, like
Just like that.
yes,
White.
right.
But as white as possible.
I mean,
Not too white. What would too
not
white
like
be?
you're sick,
Yeah.
but white as possible.
Well, here, let me show you a couple things. So this is girls' generation, right?
Yeah,
This
that's
is
right.
Korea.
That's Korea, yeah.
But is that not sick?
No, it's not. They have different tone. Like they have like darker skin and white skin. It's different.
But that's really white though, man. How about you? Let me look at your skin. Would people say you're not white enough?
I mean, I was white, but like I went to Bahamas for vacation, so that's why I get a little bit darker skin.
Okay.
The fact that she thinks she is darker right now, right? And again, it is all relative because probably maybe at other times she's a little bit more pasty, right? I don't know her, like I said, but the fact that the way that she's even talking about herself and referencing herself as far as being tan and the previous K-pop group as having variety of shade. I couldn't tell the difference in the variety, but like I'm telling you, this is why I know. If you think all those girls are melanated, then what do you think of women like me?
But in a world in Chinese culture, you'd be preferable if you were a little lighter.
Yeah, I was, but like for now, I like tan.
But look, you're not here though. Why is it that when I look at all these bands, like in China and in Korea, they all have really white skin?
Culture stuff.
Culture stuff, meaning the preference for whiteness. But is it whiteness? Because what I've been reading a lot is it's actually not whiteness, it's youth. It's like the complexion of a newborn white child. It's not even a white person.
Probably because like Chinese people are hard to get whiter, I think.
Are what?
It's hard to get like lighter skin, I think.
Yeah, that's why we have skin whitening cream. 2 years ago, I was in Ethiopia. And I was I went into a pharmacy. I was in a pharmacy waiting for a friend of mine. And can you see what that says? It says white perfect. It's not just skin whitening cream. It's like perfect white. So it's the number one skin product in the world, and certainly in Korea and China. So why are people using this? What is that about?
Skin will look better.
They look better.
Yeah, because like if you have darker skin, it's like a little bit showing an age a little bit older, I think.
I think people think like the person who has whiter skin is prettier.
Yeah, okay.
Like no matter how their like eyes or nose look like, but as long as they have whiter skin, they just automatically look prettier.
You would agree with that?
I think so.
Wow, that's pretty intense, right? So here, think about that, right? I think what I'm really struck by is the politics of skin, like how this is such a touchy subject in every culture, and it's not just the US. We're all just like, we're dancing around it.
Okay, so I hope you guys understand why I wanted to share this very last clip. And I tried to keep my interjection at a minimal, but yeah, within the Asian and especially the East Asian, Southeast Asian communities, it is more preferable to be more fair skinned. And like, I literally do not know how to explain it any further outside of showing you guys these women, these men, and in comparison to myself. Okay, I am tan skin, regardless of whether you think I am or not. Whenever I make these statements, it is not to disparage myself or to fish for compliments. Like, I really don't care. Okay, but the thing is, like, whenever I make these statements, it is just, again, to continue the conversation and share my own personal perspective and observation. So once again, colorism exists, and it exists around the world. This is just the beginning of the conversation, so I really do hope you guys stick around because it's going to be a lot for us to unpack. I've enjoyed this conversation. I hope you guys did too, and I look forward to speaking again with you guys next time. Bye.